Welcome to the Wraith YouTube channel. My name's Deke. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Niffen Napping version of the Tak-Rethan Abyss. This is one of the underwater delves, and they are quite annoying to deal with sometimes. I have completed all of the underwater variants without any type of water breathing potion, but I do recommend that if you are going to play these on tier 9 to 11, that you go and get the Noggenfogger elixir. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, to get Noggenfogger elixir from Dornigal, we're going to fly into the Foundation Hall, which is the big kind of tall building. We're going to take the portal to Stormwind. When you load into Stormwind, you're going to go to your left, and you're going to go all the way to the end of the hallway, and you're going to click on the Caverns of Time portal. Once you load into the Caverns of Time, you're going to leave the cave, you're going to mount up, and you're going to fly to the north towards the big sword. You're going to fly to Gadgetzan, and then we're going to talk to this NPC right here named Sprinkle Noggenfogger. She's pretty close to the Flight Master. She sells Noggenfogger elixir in stacks of 5, and you will want to buy a lot of these. I usually just get a stack of 100 on each of my characters because the Noggenfogger elixir buff isn't always the skeleton that gives you underwater breathing. Sometimes it shrinks you down, and sometimes it makes you lightweight or something. The other buffs aren't very valuable. You just want to become the skeleton, but sometimes you have to drink it 3 or 4 times to get the buff. Okay, so back to the delve. We're going to set Bran up as a healer, and pretty much my go-to curios at this point are the Amorphous Relic and the Porcelain Arrowhead. It looks like I am using the Unbreakable Idol on this one. My item level for this run is around 610, and I have the 2-piece set bonus. I also recommend just getting some of the at least 1 or 2 star Algari mana oils to put on your weapons, and then also some 1 or 2 star flasks to use for these really difficult delves. The extra stats actually really will help. Okay, so for this variant, we've got 3 stages we've got to get through. The first stage, we're just going to be rescuing these niffin. We'll have 1 pack here to fight on land before we hit the water, which is usually pretty easy. So just clear this pack, and then you're going to get into the water and actually get into the majority of the delve. You'll see here as I'm drinking my Noggenfogger elixirs, you do have to drink them a few times to get the buff you want. You can see there now I have the 10-minute buff where it's a little skeleton icon, and this turns you into a skeleton, and so you no longer need to breathe air. Now you don't have to worry about the bubble mechanics in this. If you want to try this with the bubble mechanics, I have another video that I did where I describe how the bubbles and their mechanics function. I'll link that here. On this first stage, we're just going to be killing Cobus and some of their minions. These little sea snakes really aren't that big of a threat, so you can usually just round those all up and AoE them down while you keep focused on your main target in case you need to stun or interrupt. It is a little disorienting being underwater, so you kind of have to move your camera around to figure out if stuff is behind you or in front of you. I feel like a lot of times underwater minions swim behind you and start attacking you, which is kind of annoying. And then this mob in particular, this trickster, does spawn a illusion of himself that does actually spawn right behind you and attack you. So you kind of have to turn your character around to get him facing you again. They will disappear after a few seconds. You don't actually have to kill them, so you just need to keep focused on the tricksters themselves. This map is generally pretty linear, but there is a pocket back to the left here that we're going to have to take to finish the first stage before we basically end up weaving back down to the right. So you're going to have to kill basically everything on this left-hand side to free these niffin. I think most of them are on this side, so you really have to kind of go through and kill all these. These Cobus Necromancers are really one of the biggest threats in this delve. They shoot necrotic bolts at you, which you need to interrupt or stun or reflect back to them. They will, around 30%, go into a death explosion, so you don't have to actually finish these guys off. You can step away from them. But one of the biggest challenges with them is that you really can't move their position. They just continually cast spells. So they have Necrotic Bolt. They also have like a cone-style frontal attack that they do that's kind of a green color, so you can see that, so you don't want to be in front of them. Again, just trying to be oriented underwater is kind of one of the big challenges. But with those Necromancers, just keep in mind that around 30% they're going to explode, so you just want to move away from them, pull any other mobs you're fighting away from them, and let them die on their own, so you don't waste all your DPS trying to get those down. You're going to free your Niffin by clicking on these little water bubbles here. And then, like I said, you're going to be moving around to the left here. So though you pretty much do have to kill almost everything on this left-hand side, but you can pull some of them away. You see here, I did get 3 of them, but there's still 1 left over by the next Niffin I need to be at that didn't come with the group. So keep that in mind that you can pull some stuff away and not have to fight everything at once. This was a particularly nasty pull for me. 3 spellcasters that I couldn't get grouped up, and you can see just how fast that they can burn through about 8 million health. So once I res up, I decide I'm going to clear it from the left around to the right, so I'm going to take that pack that I was just fighting that killed me at the end. And these packs are pretty nasty. There's a lot of spellcasters in them, and there's a lot of minions in the groups as well, so it's a little bit tricky to get them pulled off of each other. Oh yeah, and if you die, you need to re-up your Noggenfogger buff because it does not persist through death, so just keep that in mind. I tend to be able to make it through most of these tier 11s without any deaths, but the ones underwater to me just seem to be so difficult to do. I think now that I've finished every single delve on tier 11 and I've done all the achievements associated with delves, I'll probably never go back into an underwater delve again. So I think that's something that Blizzard should be looking at, is like, are these delves actually fun and rewarding after you've done them 2 or 3 times? I will say that I've started to get some special cosmetics that come out of the chests at the ends of the delves. I've only been doing 8 through 11 pretty much since week 1, so it's hard for me to say exactly where these can spawn, if they can spawn in lower ones or not. But there is a coral helm associated with these underwater ones, which I already have. And there is like a mushroom head piece with the Fungarian delve. So I know that there are some special cosmetics you can get out of the chests. I'm just not exactly sure what tiers they can drop on. So I know they can drop on 8 to 11. I'm just not sure if they can drop on the lower tiers. So once I clear all the other packs up, I decide I'm going to just test out something with these necromancers. And basically there is this big pillar in the center of the room that you can line of sight the necromancers with. They are really sticky minions. They do not want to run to you. But if you totally line of sight them behind this pillar, you can get them to run to you. So that is one method you can use. If you clear this top left alcove first, you can then pull the bottom spellcasters up behind this pillar to get them all to group, which will make that pull much easier. So I did figure that out after the fact. Okay, it takes quite a while, but we finally do get the first stage complete here, and I think there's also a treasure up in this little back area where we're going to grab this fiery shield, which is actually a pretty nice one. And now we're going to move on to the second stage, which is slaying 5 suspicious Niffen. So now we're running down to the right side of the map, and this is where it gets a little bit more linear, so you're just following the path here. And here you just want to try to kill as little stuff as possible. Obviously, it's kind of difficult to pull just these suspicious Niffen out, but you will have to kill some things along the way. But you just want to kill 5 of these and get to the final stage as quickly as you can. So some of these suspicious Niffen will be empowered by Zekvir. And one thing that I figured out about the Zekvir empowerment is that the actual image of Zekvir up there will have one of the abilities from the actual Zekvir fight. So say he may have his like web cone that pulls you into minions. He may have something where he throws little shadow pools on the ground that you have to dodge. There's a bunch of different abilities. So you kind of have to pay attention to that anytime you're fighting the Zekvir empowered minions. But they're not typically that much harder than just normal minions. These Cobus Spearfishers tend to be a really big problem if you have to fight them in conjunction with the Necromancers, because if you're trying to pull the Necromancers away and get them line of sighted, then the spear guys can spear you and pull you back in, which can definitely lead to some death. So you just need to be careful if you ever have to engage a spear fisher and a Necromancer at the same time, just because they're kind of tricky to deal with. The same thing, you can line of sight the spear fishers also. You just have to have something to do that with, and there's not a whole lot of stuff in this delve to line of sight with. So there's a couple of locations where you can do a line of sight, but it's pretty tricky. We've been making our way through this stage pretty easily, but then we get to this suspicious Niffen here, which I want to pull solo, but unfortunately I get one of the unique mobs with it, which is like, I think their names are like Velo and Tala. They are very challenging to defeat. One of them has a protection shield on, so I believe you have to kill the one without the protection shield first so that you can even damage the other one, or it's mitigating a lot of your damage. And as you can see, my positioning was really bad. I fell off the side of the hill here, which prevented me from being able to interrupt some of the spells. And this fight got really, really messy, but I like to show these fights because people are always telling me that basically if you encounter one of these mobs on a tier 9+, that the run's over and you basically just can't do it from there on. But that's not true. You just either need to have a strategy, or you just need to be really good at keeping yourself alive when you make mistakes like I did in this pull. The tricky thing about them is they usually are set right on top of an objective you need. Quite often they're set on top of other mob packs, which they always pull with. So if you could just get them in isolation, they're not that hard to deal with. It's just when you have to fight so many other mobs at the same time, it makes it difficult for you to interrupt all the spells that you need to interrupt. But basically with this fight specifically, in this case, Velo had the shield and Tala did not. I think that can be flip-flopped. I may be wrong about that. But once you kill Tala, then you're able to do full damage to Velo. And they're pretty easy once you kill one of them. It's just when they're both up, they have both of them have abilities that do a ton of damage to you. So it's not as much about things that need to be interrupted. Obviously, they have some spells that you can interrupt and reflect, and you want to keep them stunned if you can. But they just do a ton of melee damage, so you just have to have ways to mitigate that. I should also mention that you do have a special action button in this second stage of this delve where you can click that to have a Niffen come down and drop a air bubble. You still have to stand in that location where you call the Niffen to get the air bubble. But if you do, for some reason, your Noggenfogger elixir runs out while you're in combat, you can click that button just to get air immediately, get your battle done, and then you can re-up your Noggenfogger elixir. So once we get that stage finished up, I actually did have to pull a lot of minions to get through that. So try to avoid as much stuff as you can and just pull the suspicious Niffen to get that done. But once you do finally get it done, you just kind of stay on this linear path. It's going to lead up to the Undersea abomination. This boss is really nothing to it at all. So it's really just a health bag and a little bit of movement. You don't have to do much here. Avoid this fungal infection. It's just a conal spray, so just move around, nothing to that. He's also going to cast these deep sea polyps, which are these mushrooms that are just spawning all over the ground. If you move your camera up and kind of do a top-down positioning, it's really easy to see them. You do kind of want to just be constantly moving during that phase because he always spawns them underneath you. So as long as you're moving when that phase starts and you just continue moving, it's pretty easy to dodge those, and you can DPS him as that's happening. So nothing much to that. And then he has this repelling blast, which is just a big AoE blast around him, which you just run out of and then come back in. That's all the abilities he has. This guy really doesn't even melee attack you. He just continually casts his spells, which makes him probably one of the easiest bosses to fight because you just don't have to deal with any, melee damage. Like, he does occasionally swing on you, but it's just so rare that, you just really don't take much damage from that. So it's just a fight where you just need to be able to move constantly. So if you've got your strafe keys bound instead of turn keys, which I would advise, so this is something that, I'm not sure if everyone knows about, but you should do this. The game typically binds W forward, S backwards, A turn left, and D turn right. And in order to make those strafe, you have to hold down your right mouse button. But you can actually just go in and bind A to strafe left and D to strafe right. And that's the way you want to play on every character. So you can do a global key binding setting to make it so that all your characters have the same global key bindings. But if you have a lot of characters already and they have different key bindings, you just want to go into each of your characters and rebind A and D to strafe left, strafe right. And that will make your life much, much easier as far as moving around. And that's going to be helpful for everything in the game, not just delve. So anyway, I thought I'd just throw out that little tip in case some people don't know about it.
Shockwave.
This fight is super easy, so we're going to go to the end here and grab our loot. I've got a couple more delve videos coming. I think as of the airing of this video, I have 2 delves left to post videos on. And then I thought maybe I would do a few videos that just cover some of the boss fights and also some of these unique fights more in depth. We're about 5 weeks into the expansion. Are you guys still enjoying delves? Are you pushing high tier content? Are you just sticking with 8s? Are you fully geared from delves? Like, what is your delve journey? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Please hit like and subscribe on your way out. Thanks so much for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one. Later.